Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Flexi webinar. My name's Bennett. I'll be the moderator for today. Our presenter is Bobby Cagle, sales manager at SAi and one of our Flexi experts. We've also got Jason Stone joining us, who will be helping me out with the questions today. And Bobby will be walking us through some of the things you can do to improve color management and improve the consistency of your printing. After the presentation, we'll be able to answer any questions you have, either about color management or any other Flexi topic. So feel free to put those questions in the chat and we'll answer as many as we can. Bobby said that this webinar might go a little bit longer today. It'll be at least an hour, and then we'll have some Q&A at the end. So just so that you're aware of that. And we are recording the webinar as always. So if you want to review anything that Bobby discusses or share it with anyone else, we'll be sending you all the link this afternoon. So look out for that in your emails. And that's it from me. So we'll go ahead and turn it over to Bobby.
Hello, how are you? Hopefully everybody's doing well this afternoon. So just wanted to kind of start off with a little introduction about, Jason and myself are channel sales managers. We are by far not necessarily color experts. We've both been doing this about 20 years, probably about 40 years between the two of us. And we know a lot about how to get some really good color out of your printers. There probably going to be some of you are going to probably even know more than both of us do about the colors and color issues. There are some things, and I know I've already seen in the chat some things about bringing in certain file types and things like that versus AI versus PDF and LAB colors. Those are a little bit beyond the scope of what I think we're going to do today. What I'm really just going to show you is how to create some good colors in Flexi, how to test your colors, how to make sure you have the right profile set. So some of those other things, there may be some issues with 22, making sure that it brings files in the way older version 10 or 8s did. They may not all bring the files in the same way. And maybe you have to bring files in, and if you have an older version of Illustrator, it may save the files as an EPS or an AI better than it does a PDF. So some of these things are going to be some trial and error and some experimentation with figuring out what the best file type to bring into the software is. But what I'm going to show you is once you have a file in, how do you make sure that the colors are going to print the best way that you can? Or if you have a vector file, how do you create the right colors and how can you kind of make sure that what you see on the screen may be closer to what you actually get printed rather than seeing really bright, vibrant colors on the screen and where you can't see those otherwise. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen here. And we'll go ahead and get started here. Share screen 2. All right, so there's my Flexi. And then we also have Jason Stone. Jason, is been around for years, and he's going to hopefully try to answer some questions in the chat. I'm going to try to not do necessarily any questions during the middle of it because I do have a lot to get through. So hopefully we'll try to get through a lot of this today and get everybody on their way. The first half, I'm going to go over Flexi Design and what you can do in Flexi Design to have the best colors. The second half, I'm going to spend kind of going over the production manager, what profiles are, how you can check and make sure your profile is going to print better than maybe what you think it will or will not, and see what the differences in some of the profiles for different printers are. All right, so first thing I'm going to do is go over the color palettes down here at the bottom. So when you have a design and you have something on the screen, you're going to want to color it. And we've got some basic colors right here that you can use. But what if you want more colors than this? Well, one of the color specs that a lot of people use are Pantone colors. So one of the things you can do in Flexi is if you come down here, we have more color palettes than just what you see right here. I can right click on here, open a table. And when I open that table, what happens is this comes up with my library. The library right here opens up, and you can pull up anything from 3M colors to FDC to Aurafoil. But all the way down here, we have a folder called Pantone. When you open up Pantone, one of the best ones that I've found seems to work best, and it's the most universal, I think, is the solid coated right here. So when you double click solid coated, it now has opened up a color palette right here at the bottom. Now I can actually take a design and make it PMS Pantone 124. Now you can kind of tell that it's Pantone 124. Down in the lower corner down there, you'll see that one's 116, and you can pick whatever color you want. Now this is kind of hard though to see all the different colors and get over to reds and blues. So one of the things I like to do is grab this edge right here, this border, pull it up onto your desktop right here. Now I can actually scroll down through here and I can actually see my colors. You can even bring this over a little bit. You can see your colors, get down into, whatever color you want. If you know you're trying to hit Pantone 252, for example, you can come over here and click that. And now you've got a nice Pantone color. After you're done, you can bring that down and park it back here. Get it parked down here on the bottom, and they'll both be right there together. Now, one of the things that happens when you bring this in, however, is this is now defined as a spot color right here, as you'll see. This one right here is an RGB. Now, this little color mixer right here is pretty important when you're trying to get colors and hit colors the right way. Because one of the things you can do is you can take this color, which is an RGB, and you can change it to CMYK. And you'll notice the color kind of changed on the screen for me right there. And then you can also change it to an LAB color or back to the spot color. And when it's a spot color, you can actually come in here and change the transparency of it. I can make it lighter or darker based on this color bar right here. Okay. So that's one of the things you can do. And then one of the other things that we have up here, again, everybody probably knows about the fill stroke editor, and the fill stroke editor actually will tell you a little bit about the color, and you've got the spot color here. All those colors will show up right here. And as you pull this down through here, you'll see it goes down through all the colors. So you could actually select whatever color you want from using the fill stroke editor right there as well. So a couple of different tools as far as being able to know what you have. Now, again, which one is going to print better? Depending on your printer, it may vary. So that's why everybody here is going to have, in the thing, is going to have a different printer. So I can't really speak to specifically whether an HP printer is going to print LAB colors, is a Muto printer going to print spot colors, or Pantone colors better. Again, you're just going to have to do a couple of experimentations with it, but I'm going to show you a way that you can create a color palette using these colors down here to make it a lot easier on you in trying to make sure what colors are going to print and which ones are going to print correctly. All right, so one of the things that I want to do is I'm going to pull up, I've made a table here with some swatches, okay? And one of the things I want to also show you is Flexi has something called soft proofing, okay? Now, what soft proof does, if you'll notice, these are really bright greens, red, blue, and you probably will notice your printer doesn't print greens quite as bright as this. And one of the things that you can do to determine how your printer is more accurately going to print this is turn on something called soft proof. And when you go to view, soft proof is right here. And if you'll notice, it's got this icon right here. And so when I turn on soft proof, you'll notice these colors are going to change. They darken down a lot. Now, the RGB and the CMYK look quite a bit different. The spot color is a little brighter. The LAB is a little darker. And it's possible the CMYK and the LAB may more accurately print the way this color is going to print on your printer. But what did soft proof do exactly? Now here's the icon for it. So I can toggle this off and on very quickly right here. And you'll see the colors down here and everything else change. But what is determining how that soft proof shows you those colors? Well, one of the things that it does is the monitor settings in showing what your monitor and what your profile look like together. So when you're right here, I can come over here to my edit button and I'm going to come down to my color settings. So what this is going to do is pull up a screen right here. And these are the color settings. Now you have a couple of different things here. You have the display settings. You also have your input profile. And then you have the rendering intent, how these things are going to print when they output. So we're going to go over a couple of these. And again, your printer is going to determine how these things look. I'm not going to be able to sit here and say, yeah, this is the best thing to do for this file, this printer. Depending on the file, depending on the colors, depending on what it is, are going to change how this looks. So right now, one of the things, when you pull yours up, it is probably going to be set to this sRGB monitor. And then let's say we want to pick the Roland. I've got Mutos, I've got Rolands. Let's pick the Roland, the VG2 right here. And then you can also then come in here and pick which profile you're actually going to print this with. So if I'm going to print this with CMYK, like some cyan, like magenta, orange, and green, I can select that profile. So then when I click OK, now my soft proof is going to be different than it was. If you'll notice, these colors look a little different than it did when I had the HP profile. So making sure you pick the profile you're going to print with and the printer that you're going to pick in your color settings will make a big difference as to whether or not your soft proof more accurately reflects the colors that you're going to get. Now, if I change this printer over here to, say, the SG3, which is only a 4-color process printer, and I pick OK, now it even looks a little bit different from that. You know, the blues may be a little different. These look a little darker on that. Now, you would think that a CMYK printer, that if you just had the right CMYK values in here, that they would accurately print that value. Not necessarily, because the way this thing interprets the files, even though these are CMYK, it is actually converting them. When Flexi rips the file, it actually still converts them to an RGB/LAB model before it actually sends them to the printer. That's what the rip is doing. It's converting it to a different color space. There are classes that you can go to and spend 2 days going on about color space, LAB colors versus CMYK versus RGB, and how these color spaces. Again, I'm not going to get into a lot of that today. What I'm going to get into is how can you make sure the colors you see on the screen more accurately reflect what you print. I would probably take a file and do something like this. And then also, let's make sure what we have here. So as I click on this one, as you'll notice my color mixer here, RGB, that is definitely CMYK, that is definitely a spot, and that's LAB. But if you'll notice, when I turn the soft proof off, they're all the exact same color. So it does make a big difference as to whether or not what profile you pick and how you're picking that. Now, again, all that is doing right here so far is changing the way this looks on the screen. It is not actually changing the file in any way, shape, or form, okay? This has not done anything to make it print any differently, okay? This is just for your screen. Now, your input profile, this is where you can pick the sRGB, I think, is the standard input profile that comes in. And depending on the file type you're printing, you're bringing in, generally this works for most file types. If you have a different kind of file, you may want to try a couple of different ones of these and see how they affect your file and see if they come in a little bit differently. I'm not going to be able to tell you what one is going to do versus the other one. But a lot of times this generic LCD monitor, when you're matching the display settings to the input profile, those will match a little bit closer. And then on the rendering intent, So one of the things that we've determined is bitmaps work better with the perceptual rendering intent. Whereas vector images, the relative color metric works a little bit better. Now, one of the things that I want to go over then here is a lot of people have questions about what are all these, because we have different options. We have perceptual, relative color metric, saturation, absolute, no color correction, and black point compensation. What do they all do? Well, 90% of the time, you're going to be printing generally in the perceptual and the relative color metric. So the way it's been explained to me, and I understand it, is the perceptual will take a color, and if some of the colors, like this bright green, fall outside of the color space that printer can print, it's just kind of going to average it in and kind of bring it in to where it's kind of the best fit, where it thinks it should be printing that color. Now, relative color metric, however, will take it to the closest pixel that is inside the color gamut from there. And I'm going to explain that. I'll show you what that means here in a few minutes by looking at actually what the color gamut is here. A lot of big words, a lot of weird stuff going on here. But for the most part, this is going to just kind of be bitmaps are perceptual, and these are relative color metric. If you need a little bit more of an explanation on that, we can go to our help topics, and so we can come in here and just go to rendering intents and pull that up. And so what we get here is you actually can come in here and find some articles on job properties and color management and different things like that to get a little bit more in depth on what some of these selections and some of those kind of things are. So if you want to get more into detail, I'm not going to go into those here, but if you wanted to get more detail in those, you can actually come in here to our help menu and be able to find that kind of thing. All right, so we've got that here. This is where we are, and let's make sure. Okay, so one of the things that you want to be able to do also is maybe match a color to another color palette. Let's say that, and let me bring in, let me go back to my untitled window here. So we've got this spot color. It's Pantone 252C. And this is not printing this exactly right, but we want to find out what other colors might be close to this color. Well, one of the things you can also do inside of Flexi is bring up this color specs library. Now, in the color specs library, I've got this color here, and it's showing the color right there. Now, I can also go to find, and when I go to find, I can actually come in here and tell it what swatch table do I want to look for it in. So if I'm trying to find this, and let's say I'm going to look for it in maybe the Oracal vinyl, maybe the Oracal 851 series films, and I want to know a vinyl that may be close to that color, I can actually come in here and search for that. And it will, where'd it go? So you come in here and you can also select the delta E. So a normal delta E is 40. I've been told that anything under a 20, your eye really doesn't see the difference. 10 to 20, your eye doesn't see the difference in that delta. But let's search the whole swatch table here. I've got black selected, so let's come in here and select something like this and search. So here are all the colors that it has found that are very similar to this, and the delta E. This is the difference between this color and what this color is. So there's several other colors that we could try to print that may be close and or better to this. And it'll tell you where those are coming from, what those values are, and different things like that. If we go to Arlon and then search, yeah, there was nothing in the Arlon. So different things like that. will help you depend on what you're trying to get. Now, all that's well and good, but what I want to do, let's say I'm trying to print one of these colors in here. One way to do it is do like what I did on the other thing, is draw a bunch of boxes and drag and drop colors in there. That's not really very time effective. So what we're going to do here is I want to create a swatch table very quickly. I know certain manufacturers have swatch tables. I know Roland does. I think Mamaki may even have a swatch table and some different things like that. But what I want to do is be able to make a table out of this color palette down here. And I can open up as many color palettes as I want down here. I can open up a table. We can come back here and open up a table, say for the Oracle 851, and bring those up and just see what those look like in here as well. So see, I have a bunch of different color palettes here, but I want to print a swatch table with these. So the way we are going to do that is if I come to view and I go to create swatch and current palette, okay, this is bringing up my default color palette right here. Well, that'd be great if that's what I wanted to print, but that really isn't what I want to print. I want this one down here. So I'm going to come over here to my Design Central, come here to Pantone Solid Colors, and you'll see I just now have a large number of swatches here. This looks good. This is ready to go. I can actually change the number of columns if I want to. I can spread it out, or I can bring it down if I have a narrower media that I need to get it to fit into. But once I'm ready, I'm going to click my check mark. And what it does is it instantly makes a swatch table with the name of each color right next to it. So now I can take this and I can print this out, show it to a customer, and if they're trying to get 273C, maybe 274C is closer to the color that they actually want, or 272, one or the other. But it will give you a lot better idea of how close your printer is actually printing to the actual Pantone color. These are all considered spot colors. I'm going to right click here and I'm basically going to ungroup it. This is one of the recommendations I give to everybody is if you're trying to print something in this color area, ungroup your swatch table and select just this color section. That way you can print just that part and you don't have to print the whole thing, because this whole thing together is over 10 foot tall. So quite a large number of swatches on this one. We could also, however, let me just open up a new window here. If you wanted the, again, and I'm going to go over the create swatch. Now, a couple other swatches that are already in here. We do have a duotone swatch, which is going to look something like this right here. And where's my Design Central? Come on. It's quite a large swatch table. So don't know necessarily if you want to be printing this, but it does have some more colors and things to it. Give it a second here to finish this up. And then, so you can do that one. And it may not like that with me doing that here with this, but we'll see. The other thing you can do is the CMYK table. But these are, you know, different swatches that are just automatically in here ready to go. Yeah, you can see my percent bar down here. So yeah, I tried to print too big of a swatch table with all the being online and all the other things that I've got going on. So let's see what we can do here. There we go. All right, so view, create swatch, and the CMYK. Now this is a really good one right here. This one actually has your CMYK values printed in a table. So if you're trying to print reds and you want to be able to know what the value of it is, so I'm going to ungroup this again, right click, ungroup. So I can click on one of these, and if you'll notice, all right, so this is 90% magenta 90% yellow, and then 50% cyan. And if you'll see 50, 90, 90, and it's ready to go. So you can print this table out and know that you can hit any of these colors. So if you're trying to get some specific reds, or a red you're using is too orange and you want it to be a deeper, richer red, well, maybe it's one that's over here in this color family. Well, when you click on this, you'll know you can print this exact color red by using these color values right here. So that's another really good way to be able to print color. What I'm trying to do is just show you ways that you can find the best colors that your printer will print. I can't necessarily sit here and say, if you do A, B, and C, you're going to get great color, because what one person needs to do to get great color is going to be different from what the next person needs to do. Whether you're in Florida with high humidity, or whether you're in Salt Lake City, Utah with very low humidity and cooler temperatures, what works in Salt Lake City is probably not going to work in Florida to get the same colors out of your printer. So that's why it's everybody wants somebody to be able to wave a magic wand and say, yeah, here's the way to get great color. Unfortunately, there is no magic wand. There's just a lot of trial and effort, and hopefully this is going to help you, give you some tools to be able to print a little bit better color, and figure out how to find out what colors your printer prints well and what colors it doesn't print well, versus just dropping a file in and saying this file prints horribly. That's what we're trying to help you with here today. All right. So, all right. Now, one of the other things that I have had some people do that I want to just make sure that everybody's aware of is, let's say I was trying to create, say, a gray star. And I made the star this color gray, and I put it on there, and I didn't really like that color gray. I wanted to pick this color gray right here, which was a lighter gray. Well, unfortunately, these grays right here are cut contour colors. So if you select one of these grays, looks like a nice gray color here. Unfortunately, that will not print because it thinks it's a cut contour color, and those colors are not intended to print. So I've talked to several people that were said that, you know, and it looks like it's going to print. You send it to Rip and Print, you see it, it looks like it's there, but when you print the file, nothing prints on it. That's because you used one of these swatches to make your gray. You cannot do that. Just want to make sure everybody was aware of that, so you don't run into those issues there. All right, so let's get rid of our color palette here. And let's see, what else do I need to cover with you here today? Okay, the one other thing that I wanted to go over here on the file here is in the color settings. A lot of people ask about this, the pure hue here, okay? This really is only intended if you have a color that you want to be pure yellow or pure cyan in the file, okay? It's really not going to work if you have multiple colors together, and you've got a magenta and a yellow put together or something like that. You can try to get that here, but if it has 3 or 4 colors that it's mixing in, these are not going to do you any good whatsoever. It's only if you're trying to do a pure yellow or a pure black. And then the clean color right here, if you select this, let's say you're printing a yellow and your yellow has little black dots in it. That is because the way that the profile and the way Flexi is interpreting that color, it's seeing some of those other dots in that color for trying to print it. And you want to get rid of those black dots in your yellow. You can actually select yellow and even select clean color. And depending on the tolerance here, it is going to clean that up. I would probably not even use the clean color here, because that could change the way that looks. But if you just want a pure yellow color, then use the pure hue option. For the most part, I probably would not even mess with these. You can experiment with them, see if they work a little bit better, but for the most part, you're really not going to see a lot of difference in using one way or the other on that. All right, Jason, was there anything that I covered that anybody really needed that we need to go over with somebody? Just want to make sure before I'm getting ready to go over to the production manager now to show them some of the settings that are in there.
I've been going through trying to answer the questions as they come in, so I think you're
Okay.
good to continue at this point.
All right, perfect. All right, I do have one other thing that I want to show you too that you can do. Let's say you brought a file in. Now this is a vectored file, so you can see all the different colors that are in here, ready to go. And I really like these colors. I printed this. The colors print great, and I want to make a color palette so I can use these colors either on another file or I can use them. Maybe I'm going to make some other things for the Coyote Cafe, and I want to use these exact colors that are part of this design. Well, one of the other things you can also do is we're going to right click on our color palette and we're going to go to new table. So basically what that's done is it's opened up a brand new blank swatch table for me. Now there are a couple of different ways you can add swatches to the swatch table. One of the ways is I can say, click on, let me ungroup this here, click on the yellow, and apparently I'm not ungrouped. Click on the yellow. There's my yellow. There's the RGB. I can actually, from my color mixer here, or even up here, either way, but I can grab this color and I can drag this down here and drop it right into my color palette. If I wanted to make it part of my default color palette, I could drag and drop it right onto there. So you could do that with every single one of these colors. That's not exactly what I want to do on that, but let me show you a quicker way to do that. So let's right click here and we're going to say merge from document. So it's taking the document we have, it's looking at every color that's on there, and I'm going to, in one click, merge all of the colors from that document into this color palette right here. So I now have a color palette that I can come down here, and it's got all these names. It's got all these weird names here because we didn't actually have color names. But then you could actually come in here now to your color spec library, and let's find those colors. They may be down here at the very bottom. So now I could come here to this number 2, and I could call this. Let's see here. We can call this OT orange, say. And then when I click on the next color, that has now changed the color. So now I can call this, purple, we can go green, so you can name all these colors exactly the name that you want them to be. And then you'll have your own custom set color palette with the colors that you want to be able to print, and how these colors print and that they're perfect for that job or future jobs. Anytime you want to come in here and create a custom color, you could come in here to CMYK. We can change the colors, add more magenta to it, do whatever we want. And once we have that color set right, you can always drag and drop that color into any one of the color bars that you want. I would recommend creating a new one and not messing up with your default color palette, because this palette is saved as part of the part of your default swatches. So I think it would be much better just to kind of open a new table and make a new color palette table, and you can even rename this table, so we could call it Coyote Cafe Swatches or whatever we wanted to do. Just another one of the and then that was asking me if I wanted to save the changes in that swatch table that I just made, and I said no, so now it's not going to save it. All right, so we've gotten out of that. Were there any of the other ones? Okay, now so sending jobs to the production manager, and I'm going to turn my soft proof off. And this file here, let's go to different color settings here. And then we are going to, All right, so let's pick the Roland printer here real quick, because these have some bright green colors and different things like that in there. Okay. So as you see, when I pick the Roland, I get a little bit brighter colors because the Roland has orange and green ink cartridges in it. So it definitely does change the way you view these colors here. So we turn the soft proof, off and on. So that is off. Now you'll notice a lot of these colors are really bright, greens, reds, yellows, those kind of things. And this is going to be really hard for most printers to be able to print all these really bright, vivid colors. So what I want to do is show you what happens when you take a file like this and you look at it in our production manager with reference to the profile. So one of the things we're going to do here is this is my production manager. So this was the Coyote Cafe file. Now, one of the things I want to explain in the production manager, kind of start from the beginning here on it, is you want to make sure that you have profiles selected for the printer that you're sending it to. Now, let's double check. All right, so this was sent to the VG3. Now, if you'll notice, I have 5 different printers, so you can actually load up to 5 printers and run them all simultaneously with Flexi's production manager. So you can run HPs and Rolands and Mamakis, everything together. The Mamakis and the HPs have the ability to do the white. We're just going to send it over here to this one. But the one thing we want to do is we want to set our default job properties properly so that they are the way that we want to print most of the time. So with this, I'm going to come in here and I want to go to my default job properties right here. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull up the production manager and the properties that are the default properties for this job and for this printer and how we want to print it. One of the first things I would tell you to do is always come in here, change this to after output hold. The next thing right here is this tab, and this is a very important tab. A lot of times this is set right here with no color correction. And I've gotten calls from several people who have been printing with no color correction because they didn't necessarily understand the difference in all the different profiles and what you need to have to print with. So when you print with no color correction, basically your printer is just going to dump ink on the file. It's going to be really thick, very heavy, way too much ink and your job will look really dark. It just looks horrible. Okay. That's just because the printer has no idea how you want to lay the ink down. It doesn't know what material you're using. It doesn't know what ink you're using. It's just going to print ink like a kind of a desktop printer does. What the profile does and what the RIP that Flexi does is it controls the amount of ink that it's putting down based on the profile that was selected. So you can actually come right here and say use color correction. Now with this printer right here, we need to make sure we know what ink set we have set up in our printer because I have multiple profiles. And one of the things that we did find in an older version of Flexi, especially on this printer, is one of the drivers had the orange, the green, and the light black channels switched on them. So once we found that out, we were able to correct that. If somebody does have this printer and cannot get Flexi to print anywhere near correct, there is a patch that is available that if your printer has the ink channel switched on it, you may want to reload that patch to be able to do the light cyan, light magenta, light black, and orange, or the light black, orange, and green. So that is one of the things you may want to look into if you seem to be trying to print out a Flexi and it just looks not good at all. So one of the other things, so make sure you know what your ink set is. Light cyan, light magenta, light black, orange, and green. We have profiles for a lot of them. Now, one of the other big complaints that we usually get at Flexi is you don't have profiles for my printer. And unfortunately, that is correct. And what with all the printers that are coming out now, this printer alone, for example, as you see, we have light cyan, light magenta, light black, orange. We have light black, orange, and green. We have orange and, light black, orange, and green here, and then just CMYK. There are so many different profiles. And I'll kind of show you a couple of this. I'm not going to create a whole profile today, but I'm going to kind of show you a little bit about what's involved in doing it. So you'll understand it's very, very difficult for us to be able to have access to all these printers. We're trying to work with some of the printer manufacturers to help them get profiles, and or the media manufacturers to get profiles. A lot of times, we're also working with some of the distributors that when a distributor installs and sets up a printer, maybe they have some profiles that they can add to you as well. But we have, the one thing that we have done, and if Flexi makes a profile for you, they're making it, let's say they made it in Salt Lake City. That profile probably is not going to work very well in Miami, Florida, because the conditions in Salt Lake City are very, very different than they are in Miami, Florida. So you really need to make profiles in with the specific printer that you have and the environment that you are printing in. High humidity, high heat requires a different profile than low humidity and cool temperatures. So I've even found that a printer will print a little bit different in the summer than it will in the winter. I'm in North Carolina, and so our summers get nice and hot, but the winters are, fairly mild. So that would need different profiles than, say, somebody who's down in Miami, where it's pretty much hot most of the time and doesn't change dramatically from one season to the next. So just want to make sure everybody understands what the profiles are and why we don't necessarily have a ton of them out there. We are trying to make them as we can, if we can have access to a printer. If any of you all have profiles out there that you've made that you'd like to share, we'd be more than happy to look at them and post them to our website if we can get those as well. All right, so one of the other things, you can change your settings for the printer. All that is set here. So those are really the main things right here that we want to do. So now that I've shown you the profile and that kind of thing, I'm going to go back to Flexi Design. Now, one of the things that's right here, when I hit rip and print, and you're probably going to find that this comes up a lot. And one of the things you'll find is a window will pop up here sometimes when you change one of the settings on here. And let me try to change one of my color settings here and say rip and print. Now it's not coming up today. Okay. You'll get a window that says use that has two settings on here. And one will say, do you want to use the current settings that you printed out last time, or do you want to use the production manager settings? And I believe I might be able to show you those in here. So one of the places you can kind of control that are some of the preferences in here. You can tell it whether or not you want to use any of those settings here. Yeah, that was all right. Okay. Let me go. All right. So we're just going to go ahead and skip that portion of it there then. But yeah, that setting up there, which asks you whether or not you want to use your current settings or the production manager settings. You can actually, there's a block you can check on that window so it doesn't ever come up again. A lot of times people like it to come up because they want to go switch over to the production manager settings. All right, so one of the things that you can do here to check the profile and see whether or not the job you have is actually going to print, or let me explain to you what this profile is. When I come up here into my printer here, I've got something called the Color Profile Analyzer. Now, what does this do? Well, this allows me to find a profile, and I've got some profiles here. So I'm going to use, say, the satin paper, light cyan, light magenta, light black, and orange. I've got the JV100, and then I've got this GCVP. So I'm just going to pull this one up right here for right now. And what that's going to do is tell me how that profile is made and what it kind of looks like. So this is kind of what a profile is. Now, this is the 3D measurements that this profile had, okay? But what does this mean exactly? Well, let me show you the 2D curve of it. So this is the color space that this color profile can actually hit. So if I'm trying to hit one of these lime green colors out here, this profile with this printer, it physically can't get to these lime green colors. It can't get to some of these orange and some of these really deep, rich reds. So depending on your color gamut, your color space, you may or may not know what you're going to get here. Now, one of the things that they've done, though, and this is kind of neat. I found this actually. This was something I did not know before researching for this webinar. Is you can actually load a file in here, and it will show you how the color space on that file is going to look for the for your printer. So let me pull this in here. All right, so I'm going to go here, and I'm actually going to tell it to look at a JPEG file. Let's go back up here. So this is this colorful skull file that I just had. So I'm going to double click this file, and I'm going to add it to that profile. See all these little dots? Those are the colors and how it's going to, these are the colors that are in that file that this really physically can't print. Now, this is on relative colorimetric. Now, what this means is, and this was where the color relative colorimetric and the perceptual come in. It's going to take this directly here in a line as close as it can to get to that color, and it's just going to stop right there. So a lot of these colors are just going to look pretty similar, about like that color right there. Same thing with the greens. Now, it's got a few colors in here it's going to hit pretty well, but a lot of the colors on this file are not. I'll show you a 3D version of it. All those dots that are outside that big gamut right there are not really going to be able to be printed accurately the way that file was created. Okay. That is this I think can be very helpful in some files. I've got another file that was really interesting. This one right here, when I load this file, all these colors come in just like a line, right like that, go right through the middle of it. And what did that file look like? What was it? Let me pull this in here, and we'll open that file up. Takes a second to load the file here. That's that file that I just loaded. A lot of greens, a lot of blacks, a couple of purples. Now, what does the soft proof do for that? If you'll notice, when the soft proof is off, and this is where I saw a lot of the color in here, this gets much darker in here when you turn that soft proof off and on. So you get a little bit better gradient, little color tone in here when you're doing it that way. When you turn the soft proof on using the color profile that I have selected, some of the things get a little darker, some of them are a little better. Just to show you the way that works there with that. So again, that's that color spec. The other thing you can also do is compare one profile to another. So we've got this, and I'm going to click a reference profile, and I'm going to do, say, the JV100 profile here. So that JV100 profile is not nearly as big of a color gamut, so I can turn that off and on to just kind of see the color gamut between those two profiles and see the way they look. When you look at them in 3D, any of the white areas are the differences between those two profiles. All right, now, one of the other things that I want to show you. So that is kind of the way the profiles are looking at the color, and that is why some profiles can and cannot hit certain color specs. I actually had one profile that I made that was, I tried to make one on fabric one time, and it was not giving me good ink saturations or ink colors. So one of the things that I did was when I was measuring it, it just was not looking very good. So the thing I did was, let's pull this back up here. When I scanned it, it gave me a very, very small color gamut on that. So let's see here. And let's take a look at that and see what it did for me. So on here, when we went to color profile analyzer, let's pull this color profile back up here. And so this is one of the worst profiles that I ever made, and I'll just show you why that is. So when you pull this up, it's not a very big profile, okay? And when you look at it in 2D, you saw how big the other one was. This one came out like this. So if you're going to make a color profile on your own, take a look at it, and if you see it like this, or it's got some weird curves and that kind of thing in it, it's probably not a very good profile. One of the other profiles I found that was just not very good is one like this one right here. Well, anyway, we got a couple other things to kind of get covered here. So we want to make sure that we kind of get to as many of those as we can. This one right here is kind of got a weird outline to it. So this was not scanned very well. So this is really not going to be a very good profile. Now, one of the things, there is a slider bar over here. What does this slider bar do? This is the more light you put behind it, the wider the color gamut looks and the brighter some of these colors can be. But as soon as you get to a certain point, it kind of all turns white. So there is no color there. But if you're doing backlit signs, the more light you have behind it, again, you see the brighter colors show up, but the darker colors are disappearing. And again, as I go down, it's going to start going down to 0 where you don't see anything. So, but 50% is about where most of the color gamuts are. That's a standard white point print. So just want to let you know what all those little tools and things are in there. Now, actually, if you're actually going to be making a color profile, and what you would need would be something like a spectrophotometer, which is going to be something kind of like this right here. This is a used X1 spectrophotometer, runs about $1,500. I've seen them for as little as $300-400. But this measures the color swatches that Flexi prints out for you to be able to make your own color profiles. If you're really serious about printing good color out of Flexi in your environment with your printer and everything else, I would strongly recommend investing in some color management equipment, something like this. And the way this works is you're going to just come basically to this, and you're going to say, create an output profile. And once you do that, what it does is it brings up a window something like this. And it walks you through the step-by-step process of making a profile. So as you see right here, we've got the VG3 640. Again, I can pick any of these ink sets in here. This is why it's almost impossible for us to be able to make profiles for everybody that needs them. Because, all right, so am I going to print, orange and green like black? Let's say I pick that. Okay, then which resolution do you want to print it at? 12 pass, 8 pass, 10 pass? So then you can name it, and then you can even come to your driver options and set those, the speed, different things like that. And once you're ready there, then you're going to go next, and then it's going to print out this little table right here. And this is like a ink limit verification, making sure. So when it prints this, the inks that are over here are probably going to look a lot like this, way too much ink. You're going to find the best one of these swatches that looks nice and clean, but still gives you the full color and doesn't start getting a little bit lighter. So once you hit that part, you're going to make it 80, 85, 90. Then you're going to go on the next. Then you have print the ink limit split test. This is the difference between where light black stops and regular black takes over. You've got black, and you can also do some of the other colors as well. And I could even import one from a previous file. But once you've done that, then basically it's going to print a swatch table of all of these swatches right here, all these colors that you see. And this is what kind of takes a while. You've got to be able to go through here and scan every single one of these swatches. And it's probably going to be at least 120 swatches, I would think, is probably what it's going to be doing. Something like that. And so you're going to click that and it's going to measure it. And boom. So that's kind of the process of making a profile. It's not necessarily hard, but it is very time consuming. Now, if you don't want to have to do the ink splits and that kind of thing, one of the things that we also have that you can do is a color profiling wizard. And that takes out a lot of the different steps that I did in there. If you'll notice, see, that one just drops it down to 4. So it takes out the ink limits and some of the different things like that. It just goes directly to here from one of the other things. So it kind of takes out some of that. It does it for you, and it does a really good job of that. All right, so that is what a color profile is. That's how it was made. But let's say you've got your profile now and you've made it and you've got a color, a PMS color that you're trying to hit. And this PMS color is, let's say we're on here. And we're going to go to our default job properties, okay? And we're going to come over here and we're going to do something called spot color mapping. And what is that exactly? Well, what that means is we're going to take something that is a spot color that we've created in Flexi, that we know what color it's supposed to be, but it's not printing that. We got it close, but it's not exactly right. So we're going to go to what's called spot color mapping, okay? And when I do that here, now this is only going to apply to this printer and this exact ink set with this exact profile. If I go to a different profile, it's going to change. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a file in here. Whoops, I'm going to, let's import the file in here. We're going to come here and I'm going to do, say, 300C. Okay, I made a swatch previously with Pantone 300C because that's the color that I'm trying to hit. So when I load that in here, it actually loads the CMYK values of everything for that color. So I can double click on it here and it pulls up this table right here that basically shows you the color, and you want to make sure that you name it exactly the way it's named right here. You know, Pantone, spaces and everything. So it knows exactly what color that you're trying to map, okay? And then what you're going to do is we're going to print this swatch table. And after I print it, I say, okay, and then I have to cancel out of this and close this, cancel here, get to here. All right, so here's my swatch table that I just printed. And let's take a look at it here. And what this swatch table basically did is it printed a table going from 0 to 26 and from 0 to 26 here. Now, the dead center swatch, which should be 13 by 13, that swatch right there is going to be the dead center, and that's the exact color that it's printing. But what this is doing is this is printing everything in 5% increments all the way around that swatch. So it's giving you a lot of different color variations to be able to see what color is exactly the right color that you're trying to print. So maybe it's this color, maybe it's over here. Let's zoom back out. So we're going to take a look at this swatch, and we may want to make it bigger. You may want to zoom it out to print it a little bit bigger so you can see exactly what it is. But let's say we determine that instead of 1313 on here, that it's going to be a 20 on this row and say 18 here on this row. So something like that color there is more the exact swatch we want to do. All right, so we're going to come back in here to our default job properties. Let's get back into our swatch table here that we have. Go to our color mapping, get back into here. And now we're going to tell it, instead of being 13 and 13, which is exactly what it is, we know that X, we wanted it to say be 20, and Y be, let's say 25. Now watch the values over here in the CMYK. When we change that to 25 and hit update the color, all those color values change. So now we have now chosen, we've said that this is the color. Whenever it sees this color name, it prints this color using these values, not the ones it printed previously. Once you say okay, all that's set, that's saved in there, it's ready to go. So now we can close this. And so from now on, every time we use this profile with that color, it's going to print that color exactly the way I want it to print. So that is called spot color mapping. The one other thing that Flexi has that if you have a spectrophotometer is something called Pantone optimization. Okay. What is that? Well, if you have Pantone colors and you're trying to make sure that they print the correct color, one of the things you can do is you come in here and you click your little white arrow and optimize ICC for Pantone colors. Well, what does that do? Well, that comes in here and we need to select a profile that we're going to optimize. So we got to decide which one we want to do. So we're going to come up here to my profiles and say we're going to optimize the JV100 profile here. Okay. So actually, well, which one do I need to do? I think it's going to be, see, I think this one will work here. All right, so this is the Roland TrueViz SG3 profile, okay? Now, I need to select a Pantone library, solid coded. And it's going to pull my solid coded library up. And then I know the ones I want to optimize. I'm trying to do this one, trying to do this one. I could add all of them if I wanted to. You know, I'm just going to add a few right here, okay? And so now I've got these in here. These are the colors that I want to optimize. And then I click next. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to print, and it tells me that I'm using my I1. This is very similar to our profile creator, but I'm going to print this target. Now, when I print that target, it basically is going to print a target, and I'll show you the target here in just a second. But it's going to print this target, and I'm going to take it now and measure those values with the spectro, and it is going to return the delta E of what it measured versus what it thinks they were supposed to be. And it will try to optimize those and correct the values and change the value of it. And if it does fix it, so right now, based on this profile, it's saying we should be a delta E of 2 to print these colors. That's pretty good. That's under 10. So that should be very, very close to what those colors actually should print like. And let's close this. So here's what the Pantone swatch table printed for us to scan. And it's going to scan some swatches like this, and you'll be able to then know it's not showing the colors on them right here, but when you put in multiple colors in there, it's going to actually show you all those colors that you're going to measure, and you're going to be able to optimize those based on the settings for that profile, for the scanner, and for the printer. And it's going to know how it printed, and it's going to scan it and know how to adjust it based on the scan and the print for that file. A lot of this gets very confusing. I don't know that I understand all of it, as well as I should, because there's so many variables and so many things that could control what you're going to do. But that basically are some of the tools that Flexi gives you to be able to create your color and to help your color. Again, using the right profile, finding a good profile. The best way to do it is to make your own profiles by scanning and using different things like that. Scanning a linearization chart like that, where you're going to scan these colors, and then it's going to know how your printer prints these colors based on the color it expected it to be. And it will try to adjust your printer to either print more or less ink with the profile like that. So anyway, we went about 10 minutes over my hour. I covered a lot of stuff. I went really fast. Jason, were there any questions or anything specifically that we need to address from what I covered, or were you able to cover everything in the messages?
Yeah, one question that maybe you could comment on, Bobby, is printing a good black.
Yeah. So one of the ways to try to get a good black is going to be, let's just pull up a new file. And again, one of the things I have seen is that whether you print, and let's make a couple of stars here. So one of the things, you've got your standard default black here, okay? And then one of the things I've tried to do is you can take that black and turn it into a spot color. And hopefully that will give you a more pure black. However, I have found that if you take a black, say from like the Oracal color chart, I think this is the black. It may not necessarily look any different, but because it's an LAB and or spot color, that may or may not print it a little bit better. But one of the things that Flexi does with the way it does black, let's take this one and it's black. So the RGB, the way RGB does it is what they call color. It removes color. Okay. See, when you have 100% red, green, and blue, it's giving you, it's almost a white when you get full color. Okay. When you take all the color away, okay, then it gets you your black. So you can make that RGB. The other thing you can do is when you do a CMYK, notice the standard CMYK is not 100% of all these other colors. Now, one thing you can do is throw all these at 100%, which it's going to be putting a lot of ink down on there, but it may be a little bit richer black color, say, than the other one is here. Let's see if we can kind of see a difference in these. See, that's a little bit darker black. That one right there is a little darker black than this one over here was. That's because you're putting more colors in there. Whereas this one was, I believe, the LAB. So what happens if I make it spot? It even lightens up a little bit more. One of the other things you can do is try printing this, the CMYK swatch table, because it does have it does have a black section right here showing the CMYK values of printing that black, as well as the black swatch right there with 100% of all the values. So that is something else for getting the blacks done. But again, I think I've found that for the most part, 100% of all CMYK colors gives you a really good black if your media can take that much ink. What else, Jason?
I think that pretty much covers it. There's some good chat in here on people commenting on some of the questions as well on there with black using LAB values or RGB on there. So
And again, I don't have access to a printer. So a lot of the stuff I'm telling you are the concepts of how Flexi is supposed to print and supposed to work. With me not actually having a printer that I can actually test a lot of these things that I'm doing on, some of the things I'm telling you, you may find that they don't work at all for your environment and what you're trying to do. But hopefully I've given you enough other options of things that you can do that will show you where to go to look to try to experiment with it and find the best answers for how your printer prints your files. Again, bringing in different file types. You know, I would take the same file and bring it in as an AI, an EPS, a PDF, and sometimes I've even had to where you've had to convert it to a TIFF or a bitmap, a high resolution TIFF or bitmap, to be able to get it to come in correctly. One of the other things I will tell you, if you are designing an Illustrator or something like that, one of the best ways, instead of opening that file inside of Flexi, is to drop it directly into the production manager. So let's say you had a file right here and you needed to add the file directly into the production manager. Let's say this file right here. It generally is going to handle that file and these colors are going to look better, dropping them directly into the production manager. And you can also add, when it will add a preset right there to it. So add your profiles, all those kind of things right to that file right here when you're ready to go. Now, one of the things that Flexi does do, and this is something that we've done in a previous webinar, and if some of you all want to go back and look at it on the white ink options, you actually can come in here with Flexi, get rid of the background right there as part of the file. And let's hold the shift key down here, get rid of that. You can actually control the tolerance and get rid of some of that extra white that's in there, as you see. And then you can even add a contour cut directly to it in here, and then be able to print that as a transparency mask. And you can even see what the white's going to look like right here in that file before you send it there. That's your solid white underneath everything, and then it'll print the other colors right on top of it. So that's one of the things that you can actually do with the UCJV and the JV100 using the white inks. But dropping those files directly into the production manager a lot of times will give you the more original color and the color intent, especially with a lot of gradients, because Illustrator makes some really intricate gradients that when you open it in Flexi, Flexi has to try to reinterpret the gradients that you see that Illustrator made. Well, Illustrator has a lot of tools and a lot of options that Flexi does not have. So when it's trying to interpret the gradients, it will do the best job that it can, but it may not necessarily get them exactly the way Illustrator had designed them. When you drop it directly into the production manager, it does not reinterpret those gradients and prints them the way Illustrator intended them to be printed. Anything else?
One last thing. Would you mind going to the advanced color management tab and showing everybody where the pure hue is in there once more?
Yeah. Well, let's say you actually have a file that you brought into here. So we can come into here. And with that, you can go to your advanced tab right here and the advanced color management tab. So if you have a job in the production manager, let's say you dropped it directly in from Illustrator or something else, and then we can come to our rendering intents. Now, all these are grayed out because none of these options were here. The way this was a JPEG, I believe, that I brought in. So, and I would say recommend change this to perceptual, because it averages out that color better. You know, on skin tones and different things like that, you may want to have the perceptual kind of smooths everything out a little bit better. Something with a lot of gradients, it's going to smooth it out, the gradients between the two. Whereas the relative colorimetric is going to give you a little bit harsher lines between, say, some of the gradients possibly. So that's where that is. And for this file, this is all I can actually change. And that was right here under the color management tab, the color correction tab. And then go into the advanced tab right there, brought that up. If you're in the design side of it, however, and you want to see that, if we have this and we hit rip and print, now I get my settings. All right, so this is the settings I was telling you about. Keep ripping the print settings. This would be the last job you printed, how you had those settings. Here is the production manager settings. This is what the default job properties for that printer are. You just got to decide, do you want to print it the last way you did it, or do you want to use this one? We'll say use PM settings. Then you can come here. This is your color settings tab. And then you can get to your driver options. And then you can even get to your color setting options up here, where you can get to your rendering intents and your relative color metric and different settings like that. What else, Jason?
I think you pretty much covered everything there. You've gone past time a little bit, so I think you did a good job with a lot of information to cover in a short amount of time here.
Yeah, Bobby, thanks for
fast. So hopefully you can go back and watch the video again. It's going to be on our YouTube channel, right, Bennett?
Right. Yep. All of our webinars are recorded and posted to our YouTube channel, which you'll get the link later this afternoon in your emails. But yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions come in, and we've gone a bit over time, like you said. So we'll go ahead and close it out for today. Thank you all for joining us for this Flexi webinar. Our next Flexi webinar will be about how to use Flexi to design and then send to a third-party RIP. And that'll be on December 6th. We hope to see you there. We'll have the link to sign up for that in the follow-up email you'll receive later today. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter so you won't miss out on any webinars or other announcements. And you can sign up for that on our website. Thank you again for attending. We hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.